Right, welcome everybody to this afternoon's strategic planning. Looking round, everybody's here that's supposed to be here. So that's item 1 done. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we pass them as a true record?
Agreed.
Thank you. 3 declarations of interest. I'll start off with Councillor Walker.
Sorry, Councillor Hall, I was on mute. I have no declarations of interest on any of the items. I have received material on item 9 and I received some video information in relation to item 12 by email.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Sokol.
Mr. Chair, I think I'm not quite sure. I think I got an email from with regard to item number 9.
Yeah.
So, but no action taken. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I interject,
Thank
Chair? I think everybody's had that apart from you, Chair. Item 9.
I got it as well. It was delivered to me. Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got an other interest in items 8 and 9, so I won't be taking part in either of those. I must apologise. I did try to get a sub, but was unsuccessful. So I should be sitting out those. Sorry about that, Chair.
Yeah, no, thanks, Nigel, for that.
Councillor Hall, can we just have clarification what that interest is, please?
Oh, yes. What is the interest?
They're both in relation to the forthcoming Mayor's charity.
Right. Thanks, Nigel. Councillor Pattison.
Yes, Chair. I also have an interest in, another interest in item 8, which I don't think excludes me from partaking. And it's a bit tenuous now anyway, but I've declared it before on the previous site, which is the phase 1 of this application. My son lives right next door to the site. So that's my only interest, and it doesn't really apply to phase 2 perhaps, but just for consistency, I'll say that here. And also, yes, as received information on application number 9, and then also the pre-application report number 12.
Just for clarity, Councillor Patterson, you're partaking in participating
Yes.
rather in item 8.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Councillor Bellamy.
Thanks, Chair. Received a pack on item 9. No action taken. Thank you.
Councillor Pinnock.
Thanks, Chair. Items 9 and 12, again, no action taken.
Mohan, you've been
Yeah,
waving
sorry.
that.
So,
Yeah.
Chair, I have to come back. Yeah, actually, Carol reminded me, item 12, it's a Greenhead College. Yeah, I had an email from them to join some briefing meeting, but I declined it, explaining I'm a member of the strategic planning. I don't want to be. So I didn't take any action anyway.
Right, thanks, Mohan. And I've had papers on item 9 and item 12, no action taken on both of them. Right, admission of the public, we're on YouTube and live on Kirklees telly and all the rest of it, so best of behaviour. Item 5, deputations and petitions.
None received, Chair.
Thanks, Richard. Item 6, a review of the planning appeal decisions. That Julia.
Thank you, Chair.
Ellie?
Yeah, I'll pass you over to Ellie. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Ellie Worth. I have undertaken an analysis of the success of appeal decisions throughout the district. As you can see on the pie chart, between January and December 2020, 84 appeal decisions were received, of which 83% were dismissed. This is similar to the data last recorded in 2018, whereby 86% of appeal decisions were dismissed. 7 out of the 84 appeals were regarding tree works applications, of which 5 were dismissed, one was upheld and the other was part dismissed and upheld. 7 applications for an award of cost were also submitted, of which 2 have been awarded. 75 out of the 84 appeal decisions were determined by officers, whereby 84% were dismissed. 9 appeals were determined by members of a planning committee, and in this case 6 were dismissed. In comparison to the statistics held by central government data, this shows Kirklees to be below national average for major applications. However, it is important to note that this data refers back to April 2017 to March 2019 and was almost exclusively before the local plan. With reference to compliance, 142 notices have been served throughout the district, whereby 17 enforcement notice appeals have been received. In this case, all appeals were dismissed and the enforcement notices have been upheld in favour of the council. In comparison to 2019, there has been a significant increase in the number of complaints requiring investigation throughout the district. This is up from 381 to 598 in 2020. This in turn has also led to an increase in the number of formal notices being served, which was also up from 87 to 142 last year. This equates to a percentage increase of 63%. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ellie. Members, got any questions you want to ask Ellie? No?
No, thank you.
No? Right,
Yes,
thank you.
yes, yes,
Right, yes,
yes.
Nigel.
Sorry, I wasn't quick enough to type in the
No.
chat bar. Accepting the census for 2020, interesting to see that of the nine decisions members made, 6 were dismissed. I think that's quite a good return, given that we come under quite a lot of pressure when we perhaps go against the recommendation in the report. And it'd be interested. I would be interested to see as soon as the figures are available, the latest. Thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. Any more questions, observations? No. Right.
Before we start the applications, Chair, can I just do my little health warning speech about observers? Thank you. It's Deborah Wilts, Legal Officer. In the interests of transparency and protection of the integrity of the planning process, members who are not on the committee and have indicated that they wish to observe have been invited to do so electronically. They are Councillors John Taylor and Councillor Donald Firth. They're observing only and will not participate in the meeting unless invited by the Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Right, planning applications. Item 8. This is the one at Abbey Road, Shepley.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I am Christopher Carroll. I'm the Senior Planning Officer for the Council, and I'm the Case Officer for the planning application, which seeks full planning permission for the erection of 52 dwellings to the land east of Abbey Road North, Shepley. The site forms part of a wider local plan housing allocation. It is referred to by the applicant as Phase 2 of the 3 phases of the site allocation. Phase 1, which was submitted by the same applicant, was for 31 dwellings and was approved by this committee in June last year. The site is predominantly grass, but is also used for growing of Christmas trees. There are also a number of associated small agricultural outbuildings. The site generally slopes from south to north towards the Penistone railway line, and employment use can be immediately found to the north, whilst residential uses can be found to the south. These are 2 images shown of the site from Abbey Road North, which abuts the western boundary. These are 2 views on the site from the knoll, which is a single lane carriageway that abuts the northern and eastern edges. In terms of the site layout, the proposed development would be served by a single vehicle access point with Abbey Road North. The site layout shows how there will be vehicle connections with other phases within the site allocation. The proposed access with Abbey Road North would eventually be the sole access for the entire housing allocation, with the vehicular access approved for phase 1 shut once the commencement of phase 2. Additional footpaths for pedestrians are proposed at either end of the estate road, connecting with Abbey Road North and with the Knoll. 52 dwellings are proposed in a mix of terraces, semi-detached and detached homes, and an acceptable density is also proposed. There is a good mix of house types, and the houses meet nationally described space standards. Areas of open space are proposed near to the vehicle access point, along the watercourse and between the Knoll and Abbey Road North, where there is also an underground surface water storage tank. From here, water would be discharged at an attenuated rate into the watercourse that crosses the site northwards underneath the railway line, which is considered acceptable. 10 affordable houses are proposed in the form of either 1-bed starter homes, 1-bed social affordable rented homes and 2-bed discounted homes. This meets the council's 20% affordable housing requirement. The proposals are considered acceptable in a highway safety terms, with adequate sight lines proposed at the site entrance and forward visibility achieved around road bends. The latest layout plans show that there is adequate space within the adoptable highways to enable the manoeuvring of refuse collection vehicles. Adequate parking is proposed in line with the council's highway design guide, which includes 13 visitor parking spaces. Potential impact on the neighbouring residential dwellings is considered acceptable. The nearest property is found to the southeast and is known as Holmley. It is sited on higher ground at an acute angle to the development, partially screened by vegetation. Separation distances between the side elevation of Holmley and the rear elevations of the proposed dwellings vary from 16 metres to 20 metres. It should be noted that Environmental Health have requested a revised site layout so that the garden spaces for the plots 32, 46 and 50 do not side or back onto Abbey Road North, so that these outdoor amenity areas do not suffer from excessive road noise levels. However, development management consider that any alteration to the site layout design would result in problems of natural surveillance of the proposed streets and parking courtyards. Officers note that similar plot configuration has already been accepted by Environmental Health for phase 1. In addition, it is acknowledged that acoustic fencing or walling with soft landscaping measures would be able to result in acceptable noise levels for these gardens. These slides show some of the elevations of the houses that are proposed, which correspond with the approved phase 1. The designs reflect Pennine vernacular. Natural stone is proposed for the walls and natural slate is proposed for the roofs. Majority of the dwellings would be 2 stories in height, with some space within the attic some with attic rooms. There is also a split 2 3-story dwelling type proposed to the southeast of the site to take advantage of the changes in topography. In accordance with Local Plan Policy LP5, the applicant has submitted an indicative master plan for the whole site allocation. This shows how the site would connect with the approved phase 1 and indicatively how the remaining land within the site allocation could be developed with an additional 15 dwelling units. It is understood that the applicant is in negotiations with the landowner of the remaining land within the site allocation that has yet to come forward for development. As stated in the Planning Committee update, if the application is approved, officers would negotiate the proposed access spur to the adjoining land is adopted to avoid a ransom situation. This is in accordance with the Council's Local Plan Master Planning Policy LP5. Full planning permission is therefore recommended, subject to the necessary planning conditions and obligations outlined in the report, which the applicant has agreed to. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thanks, Chris. We've got 2 speakers, and I'll start off with Councillor John Taylor. You have 5 minutes. John, I think you're possibly on mute. Can't see him.
Hi, Chair, am I back?
Yeah, you're back, John, yeah.
I rooted out just as I trying to speak. Hopefully I won't take 5 minutes. Thank you,
Right.
Chair, for allowing me to speak to the committee. I'm actually speaking in favour of this development. This is in the local plan. I recognise that we do need to build houses somewhere, and this is a perfect example of an appropriate development. It is an infill. If you look at the boundaries of this broader site, it is surrounded by residential on one side, by the railway viaduct on another, and by a road and then on the other two sides. So it literally is an infill within the village. We recognise the need for more housing. I'm really pleased to see the range of sizes of houses and the affordable housing contribution as well. I have no problems with this development. I do have a couple of questions around the section 106 contributions. And it's only this last week that I've actually seen these, because I have been actively engaged with planning and with the developer on this site to make sure that what came forward was acceptable and suitable for the local community. The educational contribution is specified as for Kirkburton Middle School. I just wonder whether the committee might be willing to make that a little more general, that it was a contribution for schools within the locality. My reason for asking for that is that we already have an outstanding educational contribution for Kirkburton Middle School that hasn't been able to be accepted because there hasn't been a demonstrable need. And I just, by actually specifying the middle school, not possibly Shelley College or the first school, we might find that within the 5-year period, there was a need in one of the other schools, which if it's written into the agreement, it can only go to the middle school, would not be acceptable to the others. So I just wonder if the committee would just reflect on that comment. In terms of the open space offsite contribution, I welcome that. We do have plans to completely refurbish the children's play area at Shepley Rec, and I would ask that this contribution is made available towards the refurbishment of that. And I also welcome the biodiversity gain contribution. We have at Cliff House a perfect opportunity to utilise that, and that is very, very local to this this site. So I would ask that perhaps if we could, through your chair, specify that the biodiversity gain monies is used to improve the biodiversity at Cliff House and the wonderful facilities that are provided there for all children, not just children of Shepherd High Ward. I'm pleased to see that the main access point is being closed off. I've also been working with the developer to look at closing off the narrow single track that Chris showed you a little earlier up to the knoll, which is an access from Abbey Road North adjacent to the viaduct at the north of the site. That has dreadful sight lines as you come out onto Abbey Road. You can't actually see as you come out, and it's a busy main A road. My proposal is that we stop that up and create a footpath stroke bridleway out of it, which then links through to an existing footpath we have just at the corner of the knoll that goes through to Shelley. And then once you cross over, you go through up Station Lane and then down Stretchgate, and starts to create a really good walking path through the village. I also welcome the section 106 contribution for transport, and I'm keen that that is used to improve the station and the access to the station and active travel rather than metro cards, because we don't have the best of bus services out in Shepley, and I'm not sure that actually providing metro cards to all of these householders would really benefit anyone, because there isn't the frequency and number of buses to warrant commuting by bus. It is far more viable to commute by train, and really want to try and push and promote the Penistone line. So I'm very supportive of this. I think the developer's been keen to work actively with us in the local community, and we've been providing updates to the local community through our village magazine. So I'm happy to support this and hope that the committee will look favourably on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, John. Next speaker is Stuart Brown.
Right, I'll ring him now for you, Chair.
Afternoon, Stuart. You've got 3 minutes starting from now.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Stuart Brown of Yorkshire Country Properties, and I'm speaking in favour of the officer's recommendation to approve our planning application. Yorkshire Country Properties are a local house builder, only building within the Kirklees area. We've been operating within Huddersfield for many years and only employ local tradespeople, subcontractors and suppliers.
Thank you, Chair.
All our materials...
Sorry, if you've got the meeting on in the background...
Yeah, I've just turned it off, apologies.
If you could, yes, please.
Yeah, I'll continue. All our materials are sourced locally, including the natural Yorkshire stone and stone roof slates. All our designs and materials are of the highest quality, and we take absolute pride in all our projects and service delivery. Our business philosophy is based upon working partnerships and collaborative, flexible approach wherever possible. An example of this is engaging at a local level when it became clear that the local residents would like to see a section of the knoll closed up to vehicle traffic to help improve safety and prevent fly tipping. Whilst Highways have confirmed it's not a fundamental part of the delivery of this project, I am more than happy to try and facilitate this, as this is something that the locals wish to happen. I genuinely feel that this approach results in positive engagement and has created a superb project in front of you today, which satisfies all stakeholders and delivers much needed quality housing in Huddersfield. One of our company key pillars is minimising our ecological impact. The very outset, we identified the stream running through the site as being the key ecological feature. It's such a key feature that we've designed a scheme around it to ensure that it is kept open as much as possible and thus creating a green corridor running through the site. Also on the ecological theme, I'm pleased to confirm that we partnered Hedgehog Street, a joint campaign by the People's Trust for Endangered Species and the British Hedgehog Society. All our housing projects are hedgehog friendly, and we automatically design hedgehog travel routes through garden fences to enable foraging hedgehogs to feed and find shelter. I hope that everybody can see that we are an inclusive, considerate, collaborative and local developer. We've worked extremely hard to present the project in front of everybody today, and which we feel addresses neighbour and stakeholder concerns. If anybody has any questions for me, then I'll do my very best to answer them. Thank you for everyone for listening.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank
you. That's it, members with speakers. It's over to you. Councillor Sokol.
Very quick. Thank you, Chair. Chair, it's good to hear from a local ward councillor who has accepted there is a need for more houses, yeah, in his ward, and his support for this development. Yeah, it's good to know that very few councillors come up yet, supporting local plan. With regard to the contribution, section 106, yeah, I'm not sure because I don't know how far is that school. Councillor John Taylor have said they needed some contribution towards that school. I think we leave it to the officer to sort it out if they can share that contribution between two schools. I don't know. We can ask officer. With regard to this application, Chair, it's a good mixture of houses, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3, 4 bedroom. I'm really pleased with the mixture of the good houses. I'm sure it meets the needs of the local community. So I fully support this application. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohan. Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Just two small points, really. Whilst agreeing with what's been said about this application and how well supported it seems to be, can I just ask whether it would be appropriate, given that this is only part of a larger application and the 3 sites are probably intended to kind of work together, whether as part of the construction management plan we try and involve local residents. I know I've said this on several occasions before, and it seems to me like a good way of trying to ensure that the development that goes ahead is, if not with the agreement of local residents, but at least without too much of their opposition. And I just want to make a comment about the travel plan, which will include Metro cards. It does actually specifically say in the text of the report that these are Metro cards for train travel, or that would include train travel. And this strikes me as being eminently sensible, given that unlike some parts of Kirklees, this site is relatively close to a railway station. So why not try and exploit it? If no one else has thought of doing it, I will move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I also support this application, and I would like to second the recommendation for acceptance that Councillor Pinnock has just made. I think Councillor Taylor made some very good points. He actually answered a number of questions I was going to ask. I think his point about the education funding being available for whichever school needs it in the area makes sense, and I would like that to see that written into the 106 agreements. I agree with his point about sustainable transport and the use of the rail service. I think in the body of the text there are some good points made about the development of walking and cycling as well in the area, and I'm also pleased that thought has already gone into the open space and biodiversity funds and how they can be most effectively spent in the area. One of the things I did like in terms of reading this report, which I think should stand as good practice for other developments, is that it is clear that the work of the place standards survey in the area has been integrated into the planning process, and it's clear that as part of this the views of local people are being given consideration, and I hope this is something that will be taken on and that we will see it in further reports. Certainly in the ward served by Councillor Bellamy and myself, Linthwaite and Cowersley outside our ward, there's a tremendous amount of development happening and a number of applications coming forward. And I very much hope that we will see the linkage there between applications, recommendations, and the work that was undertaken as part of the place standards survey. Yeah, so I think there seems to be a good deal of support for this, and I will certainly be voting for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, yes, I support this application, but I have got a couple of questions and one comment to make. The questions are my own fault because either I can't read or I can't hear the report or what's already been said. Just about the ransom strip, I mean, the update says that it's between, or access will be made between plots 79 and 80 to 81 and 83. I'm just trying to see where that is actually on the map because it's all too small. But the last map that we have got of the site, it's at the bottom there. Is it right in the middle? I mean, that's a bit. It looks like a potential road access.
Through you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor. Can I speak? Yes, yeah. The road is in the middle, as you stated, Councillor Patterson. It's represented as a grass verge at the moment, so that grass verge would be offered as part of the adopted highway, so it would be maintained by the Highways Authority, and that's.
And would therefore the actual access road or the surfacing of the access road continue round then right to that? Because at the moment it doesn't. It stops. It changes into a different type of surfacing before you get to that point.
So, sorry, through you, Chair, again. The access road is currently shown as grass verge and as a
no. So if it was if the other site was built and that grass verge was used as access to the phase 3, I'm presuming that the resurface, not just the grass verge would go, but the surfacing would change, because at the moment it stops. I can't read the numbers of the houses, but what I presume is a better surface is stopped before you get round to that point. If you see what I mean.
Sorry.
It's a different colour on the plan anyway.
Through you, Chair, again, sorry. So I understand that the road would be adapted, so there'd be a footway, and then probably some of the surface may change. The indicative master plan shows some changing in surface types. I think the issue is that land hasn't been put forward for development at this stage, and it's just securing an appropriate adoptable highway that can serve that level of development, which is what officers are seeking to agree on with the Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay. I'll bring other Chris in. Chris from Highways.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just, well, I think he's made the point now. I just in case he was sort of struggling. I think the point is, there's an indicative layout to show how you would serve phase 3, and that would be constructed obviously as an adoptable highway if and when phase 3 came forward for development. But we just wanted to make sure that there's no ransom strip between 2 and 3, so that you could gain access to it, and we're satisfied that's been achieved.
Okay, thank you. My other question was about the knoll, and I didn't quite understand. I mean, there's going to be a footpath through the site to the knoll, and is the knoll going to be blocked up at the where it meets Abbey Road?
Jack, can I answer that one?
Thank you.
If you can, John, yeah.
Yeah, so what it is, Carol, is that bit of the road is a narrow track at the moment. It's very poor access at the bottom out onto the main road, and it's also used for fly tipping. So all we're proposing to do simply is stop it up with a bollard either end, so traffic can't get down it, and effectively turn it into a bridleway stroke footpath, so walkers, cyclists, horse riders can use it. And it wouldn't be available for vehicular access, but it would be a removable bollard if we did need to get emergency services through or something.
And it would still be a footpath from the site.
So there's a footpath from the site coming out to it, up at the north end of the site, so that people will be able to walk from the houses out onto that footpath and then walk down that footpath, and it would bring them down towards the station.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just didn't hear. It wasn't clear. My ears aren't working very well. And fine. I would call it baby brain, but that's impossible. My comment was about education 106 monies. It is a bit misleading to actually identify Kirkburton School there. It may be needed at Kirkburton School, but to be honest, and Moan's right that it should be left to officers to decide. I mean, it'll be 5 years possibly before any needs arise from the number of children of that middle school age that might be needing to go to Kirkburton. There's a time lapse in all of this, and in 5 years' time, when the houses are built, when they're filled, and when babies have been born, then that's when you'll be able to tell how many kids you need either at the Shepley First or at Kirkburton. And I certainly know that Shepley First at the moment is sort of bursting at the seams. So, I mean, I think it would just make more sense just to leave it as that amount of money, as opposed to, as John says, identifying Kirkburton Middle as being the beneficiary of it. Thank you.
Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. To be honest, one of my questions has been answered, which was about the null, which John's already answered. I actually do support this application. The only, like I said, the only thing for me is the 106 money for the education, and I do think it needs to be a little bit more, you know, take the bit out about it definitely being for Kirkburton Middle School and put it that it's to be used for schools in that area rather than naming a school. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Donna. Chris, the items what Councillor Taylor mentioned, how far can you go with manoeuvring them into place? I know schools, it's a difficult one, and it changes as times goes by. But there were one or two other things what John brought up as well, such as metro cards, which Andrew pointed out. It is for train and bus, I believe. So is there out that you want to add, Chris, regarding conditions?
Thank you, Chair. So the contribution that I saw, I negotiated it through the West Yorkshire Metro, and they provided that fee based on the train travel, given the proximity to the train station. Within the box in the committee report, however, I've kept it generic, with if members would prefer to sustainable travel measures, so that that negotiations can happen. So the travel plan puts forward a number of measures, and that could involve some that are metro cards for train travel, but it could also mean improvements to footpaths or connectivity, or some facilities within the train station itself. It just gives it that general emphasis. So that's that point. With regards to education, in my opinion, with it being with the calculations being based on need for all three schools within the area, Shepley First, Kirkburton Middle and Shelley College. I understand that given this contribution would be towards local schools, I can enter negotiations with the developer, so that it's not just for us, that amount of money for that particular school, that it could be distributed towards any of them schools. I can have that negotiation if members choose to go with that option. With regards to the null, it's important to say that that's not part of this application, in the sense that it's closure or diversion. It's not part of this application. In terms of its acceptability, that would be undertaken as a part of a separate process, and that's what I've recommended. And I understand that the developer is willing to work with Councillor Taylor to ensure that the necessary, if the null is to be closed, that the necessary advertisement and regulation takes place with regards to that matter. I think that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Chris. Well, so far it's only been moved by Councillor Pinnock.
It's been moved by Councillor and seconded by Councillor Walker.
Rob, you're seconding it?
Yeah. Before we go to vote, Chair, I think Julie Steadman can come in and just sort of give us a summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So as members are aware, we've got the recommendation set out on page 26, which is as part of that, as we've all been discussing, the education contribution does refer specifically to Kirkburton Middle School. I think from the debate and discussion that members had, and from the summary that Chris has just provided as well, would members like us the recommendation to reflect in terms of the education contribution towards schools within the locality? So that would include like the three main schools there, so a bit more flexibility there. In terms of the other matters, so relating to the biodiversity, so with that there is some flexibility still within the recommendation as set out there. And then I think one of the other matters was to do with the construction management plan from Councillor Pinnock. So we've got the conditions, the suggested conditions set out on page 58, and condition 3 there relates to the submission of a construction management plan. So we could sort of, as we've done with other schemes, include as part of that engagement with the community, what will be tied down as part of that construction management plan. So if members, like I said, those are some of the key sort of updates to the recommendation, I think, which you've been discussing, and if you think that's sort of a true reflection of that, is that what you would like to base your decision on?
Yeah.
Chair, could I just remind Julia to sum up in terms of the flexibility in the sustainable transport application of funds that was mentioned too?
Yep, thank you, Deborah. So yeah, once again, there is flexibility within there in terms of the sort of the metro car provision and other sustainable transport works there as well. So once again, the recommendation does include that flexibility within as set out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Andrew, you indicated to speak as the points being covered.
Well, just to confirm, as the person who moved acceptance, I would like to I've forgotten what I was going to say now, but including the construction management plan involving residents is certainly acceptable, including flexibility in the allocation of the Section 106 money for all 3 local schools. And also, as Councillor Taylor has mentioned, whether there is enough money to do anything about the disabled access at the station is a moot point, but I certainly think that ought to be considered. But with those included, I wish to remain moving the acceptance of this.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Right, we'll go to a vote then.
Okay,
Richard.
right, thank you. Right, so we're voting for approval of the application as outlined in the report, subject obviously to the amendments that have just been discussed and summarised by Julia. So if I can start, please, with Councillor Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Hall.
Oh,
that's carried, Chair.
Thanks, everybody. Next item, page 61. This is Hog Close Lane at Home Firth, and I think it's Fazana. I think you're muted, Fazana. We can't hear you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, my name is Fazana Tabassum. I'm the Minerals Planning Officer for this application. The application relates to this site at Hog Close Lane, Home Firth. The aerial view identifies the application site in the context of the surrounding area. The site comprises of agricultural pasture land, a deep void in the form of a gully, which extends into 2 fields, and an existing farm track served off Hog Close Lane here. The site is bordered by open land with Slack Top Lane to the east and Millshaw Lane to the north here. The site lies in an area of greenbelt and the gully forms part of the wider area of a wildlife habitat network corridor which extends to the northwest of the site here. This black line shows the boundary with Barnsley district.
Chair, do you want me to see if we can get, they're quite small, aren't they? Susanna, is it possible to, the committee can only see quite a small element of your presentation, are you able to make it bigger?
Is that any better?
Not easily.
I think via a slideshow, if you did it via a slideshow. Apparently it's the fourth icon on the right. You should be able to convert it to a slideshow.
Fazana, do you know along the top bar where you've got file and home, just carry on going.
Is that better?
It's come up with the first page. If you just click your curtain.
Yes.
That's it. Brilliant.
That's it.
Chair, do you want me to start again or?
No, I've heard it. I mean, we've got pictures in front of us anyway.
Okay, doke.
So they can see.
Sorry, I've.
Don't think you can make it any bigger.
Okay, doke. So this slide shows the existing land levels and the proposed and other works, which I'll go through now. The applicant intends to make the land more productive for agricultural purposes and as such submit to the application in full for landfilling operations and restoration. The proposals will use inert and clean demolition material, include engineering to reprofile and contour the land levels to integrate this area with the two adjoining fields. Realignment of part of the existing farm track at the access point here and provide an on-site turning area for large vehicles and restoration to grassland. As a result of these works, the existing watercourse that runs into the gully is proposed to be diverted around the landfill as shown with the blue line here. This slide shows an area of wetland area to be created in the form of a reed bed, which will also serve a dual purpose. The series of perforated pipes are proposed to be laid within the landfill itself to deal with surface water land drainage as shown in the next two slides. So this first slide shows one of the perforated land drains through the landfill site. And this slide shows a series of the land drains to be laid within the landfill site. This plan highlights the proposed biodiversity net compensatory net gains, which would include on and off-site habitats comprising of approximately 0.75 hectares of an area of heathland restoration here, the reed bed filtration referred to earlier here, and the creation of an area of woodland, 1.37 hectare in area here, and on-site restoration to neutral grassland. This following slide shows a couple of sections taken through the site to show the depth of the gully and existing proposed land levels. For clarity, the deepest point of the gully is stated to be 8 metres as stated in reports accompanying the application. This is an image of the actual application site taken from Hog Close Lane. So the access is here. This is the access, existing access, and you can actually just see the clough here, the gully. It drops down from the land levels up here. The next slide is a photo looking back into the site from the north. In terms of principle, the proposal needs to be considered with regards to greenbelt and the management of waste. Firstly, with regards to Greenbelt alone, the proposals to include engineering works are stated to be carried out and completed within a period of 3 years, subject to the inclusion of conditions to prevent stockpiling during the operations and the access being restored to its original state. It is considered the site remaining free from development would preserve the openness of the Greenbelt in accordance with the MPPF. With regards to the management of waste, paragraphs 10.10 to 10.25 of the committee report sets out the relevant guidance, policies, applicant's case and officer's response, taking into account relevant material considerations. To summarise, national and local plan policy objectives are to deal with waste in a way in which it moves its treatment up the waste hierarchy. There is a diagram under paragraph 10.11 of the committee report showing this. Landfill is the least desirable and unsustainable method. In order to assist the management of waste within the district, a waste needs assessment was produced. This sets out the current and projected quantities of waste generated, how it is to be managed over the local plan period and future capacity requirements through identifying safeguarded waste sites, which also forms the evidence base for policy LP46 of the Kirklees local plan. Officers are of the opinion the submitted information does not prove a justifiable genuine need to substantiate the applicant's case for landfilling this site above safeguarded waste sites, nor gives reasons why all other options are not suitable or feasible, and that this proposed landfill operation would not divert material away from restoration or of any other quarry void. Therefore, in principle, the proposal fails to comply with government guidance and policies LP43A and LP46 of the Kirklees local plan. Moving on to technical matters, in terms of highways, 1,245 deliveries are expected to carry out the landfill works over a period of 5.5 days a week, with 8 vehicles in and 8 out in any one day. Conditions to include dust suppression measures, hours of operation and restricting the number of HGV trips can be imposed to address sufficiently amenity and highway matters. With regards to biodiversity net gains, to compensate for the loss of habitat of principal importance within the site, drainage issues and potential land stability as a result of the proposed works, the applicant was given the opportunity to address concerns related to these matters over the course of the last year. The committee report sets out how these have been addressed. Should members be minded to approve the principle of the proposals, appropriate conditions can set out in the report, as set out in the report, can be imposed to conclude on such matters. However, the long-term maintenance and management of the biodiversity compensatory net gains proposed will need to be secured through a Section 106. This is received in draft form and currently under review by officers. To conclude, whilst technical matters can be addressed subject to necessary and appropriate conditions, the submitted information fails to demonstrate why the waste cannot be treated up the waste hierarchy. Furthermore, no evidence is provided to support the genuine need for use of this site for landfilling operations that is critical to the applicant's existing agricultural business prior to the use of safeguarded waste sites, for which there is a sufficient capacity for the planned period and beyond to deal with this type of waste. The recommendation is therefore set out in the agenda. If I can also do a quick response to the package of information sent to councillors over the weekend, which was received by officers this morning. So basically, all the information that's been received, it's all statement based. There's no evidence. No evidence is provided to prove why the safeguarded waste sites are not available, i.e. have the owners been approached or what was the outcome of that. Most quarries require the importation of material, particularly if backfilling is done simultaneously with mineral extraction. The Kirklees Waste Needs Assessment takes into account projected growth of waste to be managed for the planned period and beyond, which indicates sufficient capacity for this type of waste. The waste stream clean demolition in this instance can usually be checked, cleaned and turned into, for example, crushed aggregates which can be reused, whereby having a usable product at the end. Also, some of the information can be misleading as reference is made to the gully being unstable. There is no evidence submitted to indicate that the gully poses a threat to public or the environment or needs stabilising. Paragraphs 10.52 to 10.54 deals with land stability issues, and paragraphs 10.62 to 10.65 of the committee report responds to the applicant's claim of the gully being unstable and posing a hazard to livestock. Issues relating to biodiversity, climate change, landscape safety, farm diversification, flooding have been considered in the committee report. Comparisons are also drawn with an application at Emily Fields, Liley Lane, which was for similar landfill proposal. It was recommended for refusal and refused by committee in May 2019. The only similarities in our officers' opinions in both is that both applications is to make the land more productive for agricultural purposes to be carried out over a short period, and sites will remain open after completion. However, it is essential members are also presented with the differences. So whilst the Emily Fields application consideration was made to the policy LP 46, at the time the case officer considered the impact on minerals or sites under restoration in the district would be limited. What is important to note is that at the time the local plan was not formally adopted. As it stands now, the local plan is adopted with the evidence base for policy LP 46 as set out in the waste needs assessment, identifying sufficient land capacity through safeguarded waste sites for the planned period and beyond. One more major factor, primary difference, is that the inert material used or to be used at Emily Fields would consist purely of subsoil and topsoil. The difference is subsoil, topsoil is classed as a clean, naturally occurring material. It doesn't need treatment or further processing, whereas in this case with Hogclose Lane, inert material, including clean demolition material, can be cleaned, checked and reused in the form of, for example, crushed aggregates. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thanks for that. 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers. First speaker is Councillor Donald Firth.
Thank you. I'd like to speak on this proposal. Can everybody hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, right, thanks for that. The proposal for the landfill scheme at Hogclose Lane, which is, it says near Epworth, but it's far enough away from Epworth, actually. It's Upper Victoria. It's way out, and I decided yesterday to go and have a look and see what it was all about. And I've got to say, I cannot understand why the council are sticking their heels in on this one, because what this guy's a farmer and he's wanting to level this field out. I don't know about the safety hazard of the gully. I haven't been in the field to look, but I did go within about a quarter of a mile of what he's wanting to do. And as I say, what he's really wanted is wanting to fill that gully up with inert material. He's wanting to divert a stream, which when it rains quite heavy, it has a tendency to flood the lower side of that land. So he's wanting to stop the flooding, and he's putting a small pond, if you like, at one end. And the water will run off directly into the watercourse by the overland flow, and it's accelerating the rate of erosion year on year with the water runoff. So it's eroding, as it is now, it is eroding that gully every year. His application was originally submitted in 2016, and I just wonder, why has it been going on now for thick end of 5 years? It's cost the gentleman a lot of money. He's got special reports on just about everything. And he's gone down the line of agreeing to everything the council wanted. and still they're not satisfied. This guy is a farmer. He's not a builder. He's a farmer, and most farmers look after the land, and it's a case of the husbandry is good, and his animal husbandry will be even better for his sheep if they have a level playing field to go on. So at the end of the day, I am amazed that we've gone on for so long. We've mentioned, Fasana mentioned Wiley Lane at Grange Moor. I didn't see that, so I can only say what's been written down is it's a similar scheme to Liley Lane, and that was passed on appeal in 2019. But looking at where it is, the situations it's in, what he's wanting to do is only wanting to make his farm better, his land better, looking after his land, which it needs looking after nowadays because we're building on most of it, you know. And this is very nice to see that there's a lad here wanting to make it even greener. So I would, I'm here to support it. It's down to the committee what they want to do, but I would suppose if it was me anyway. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thanks, Donald. Next, we've got Paul Bailey.
I'll just get him on the phone, Chair.
Got 3 minutes starting from now.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Afternoon.
This application has been running now for 5 years. I think the only issue really that officers have is their objection to waste policy 43 and 46, which wasn't an issue until a few weeks ago. The application has previously been to the Strategic Committee in September 2017, and there's been various consultations with the planning policy team over that period, and this issue wasn't previously raised. I'm conscious that the local plan wasn't adopted until February 2019, but it was a material consideration going back as far as April 2017 when it was actually placed on deposit. Policy LP 46 is effectively geared towards reducing the amount of waste going to landfill, and it's primarily aimed at large waste generators, commercial waste operators and waste transfer stations. Mr. Turner is a farmer. All he wants to do is reclaim a piece of land and improve his farm. He will not process waste. He merely wants to use inert waste, which has already been screened by waste operators. So that means that everything that can be reused or recycled in line with the waste hierarchy will have already been taken out. We know from talking to local waste operators that despite what officers say, there is a short supply of sites, and fleets of wagons each day are travelling outside of the region to tip. Those designated sites referred to in the report are not ready to receive waste. Members, if they so choose to, could add a condition to the application requiring that the inert fill has already gone through the screening process. With regards to the description, the report in 10.1 says that the gully is a habitat of high importance. This is misleading. It is accepted at the foot of the gully where it meets Cat Clough, there is a small amount of shrubland that will be lost, but this will be more than compensated through new woodland, wetland and heathland creation. The remainder of the site, which was created by a former industrial activity, suffers from severe erosion, and the majority of that is shale, clay and grass. In terms of the previous appeal, I must point out that the appeal decision was made in December 2019, and the actual Kirklees local plan was approved in February 2019, so almost a year before. So the policy was well established by that time.
That's 3 minutes.
Hello?
Hello. That's 3 minutes. Yeah. You've had your time, I'm afraid.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, next speaker is Danny Watson. Right, Danny, you've got 3 minutes and it starts from now.
Okay. We're a local haulier. We've had our own restoration site, which is now reaching completion, and the other local tip, Braithwaite's Excavations at Bromley Farm, is also reaching its completion. These were the only active sites locally accepting inert waste over the last few years, and are both now closed for tipping. There are other sites which will eventually need restoring, which may have permissions for tipping, but we feel are not an option currently. Marshall's Appleton Quarry, that's still got stone reserves, which are still available with plans for further extraction, and therefore it's not an option for the foreseeable future. Marshall's Sovereign Quarry has stone reserves that are still available as well. That quarry is subject to a limited amount of movements, and 6 months of the year has trouble with flooding. So I can imagine that being another 5 years before that would need restoring. Maybe a little bit sooner, maybe 4, maybe 5 years. Another quarry mentioned, Oxley, that's been dormant for around 15 years now. It was used by Hepworth and Wavin for clay extraction for the pipe production. We can't see that having any plans for restoring. So at the moment we're really tied for anywhere locally to tip the inert waste needed. We need a local tip here for the construction industry and to reduce the amount of road miles needed to transport spoil necessitated by the increased demand for new housing in this area. I'll now pass you on to Darren Crossland.
Hello there. Right, I do the transport for BMW quarries, so directly impacted by what we've got for tipping. Currently, we've got Johnson's as really the only inert landfill within Kirklees, which has been closed for a large part of this year. It is now open, but it has been shut. There's Bradley Park landfill, but they'll only accept non-haz material, not inert. They take cover material, but it might only be 20 loads a month, and then that's it. Got quite a few jobs in Denverdale, Sisset, Skelmanthorpe area. We're currently taking materials to East Cowick, Barnsdale Bar and Brotherton, which varies between a 60-mile round trip and 67 miles, which which is between 35 and 45 litres of diesel per trip. Bromley Farm is now closed as well, which has pushed up muck shift price in this area from £140 a load to around £230 to £250 per load, which has a direct impact on local house builders as well, on affordable housing. The only tipping that's near to Shepley is South Yorkshire. Now, South Yorkshire will only take materials that doesn't have clay in it. Kirklees is all clay-bound material. You don't get anything without clay in it. So that's not an option at all. There's quite a few new local sites coming up. Shepley, Sissit, Skelmanthorpe, with, again, no local tipping available. So we're going to be taking it over to Goole area again. If there was local tipping, we would have an option for maybe screening some materials and recycling. There's a lot of materials around here that have stone in it as well as clay. If there was local outlet for clay fines, it would make it cost effective to do it. But at the moment, 100% goes to landfill just because there's no outlet for our waste material as it were. It's just not worth doing it that way. And I think that's me done.
Right. Thank you very much, Darren. Right. That speaker's done. First on the button, Andrew Pinnett.
Thank you, Chair. I having read what's in the report and come to one conclusion, and now listen to what people have said, I am in two minds. And one item particularly that concerns me is this is to do with the waste hierarchy, or connected with that anyway. And it's not clear to me. Well, we don't appear to have any figures showing what capacity is probably available, what capacity is theoretically available, and so on. I am very tempted to ask for this to be deferred, because I don't think we've got enough information for us to decide whether, given what we're being told, given the reasons for refusal, I can't see where what the evidence is for saying that there is sufficient capacity without this site. Yet we're being told by people who've made representations that there isn't sufficient capacity. So what is the truth of the matter? I won't actually move anything yet, but I think I did go and look at the site this morning, and I have sort of familiarised myself with it, but it's not clear to me what whether this is the right way to proceed. We haven't got enough evidence. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, also having read the report and the extra information, and now listening to, the representations, I'm actually now more going for approving this. There's been discussion of a reduction in travel, which surely that's, good for the environment, people not traveling, I'm not traveling miles and miles, to get rid of the inert waste. And looking at it, they seem to have ticked all the boxes. The only thing, and it was mentioned that there'd be a creation perhaps of new woodland. I think it'd be quite nice if this could be, filled and plant lots and lots of trees up there, which would help even further with the environment. So I'm actually looking at approval, but I'll just see what everybody else has got to say first.
Right,
thank you,
Donna.
Chair.
Thanks, Donna. Moan.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I read the report very careful carefully last night. I'm actually listening some people here, supporter, objectors, and also I'm a bit too-minded on this application, honestly. Yeah, I mean the applicant want to bring the site into use, which have been empty there for many years. Yeah, might be. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know how we can do the put either we, as Council Pinnick said, we defer it, come back with more information, or we can ask, or we can impose some conditions somehow. But I'm not clear about. I'll listen to members. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohan. Councillor Pattison.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm in two minds about this one as well. I don't think it's sufficiently said, or there is there's already sufficient landfill capacity. I don't see necessarily the justification for that. I recognise the greenbelt arguments as well. But from we've got nobody objecting to it. We have the statutory and non-statutory consultees having no objections either. I think the applicants have put an awful lot of work into providing a net biodiversity gain and things like that. So yes, without sort of more evidence as to why there is sufficient supply, I think we should either approve or defer. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar place, I think. Originally, when I looked at this, I felt that the argument in terms of how this clashed with our waste strategy was very strong. But as Councillor Pinnock says, it's not clear from the evidence that we've had whether or not at the moment anybody wishing to dispose of waste from sites within Kirklees has got an alternative. We've not really got the figures on which to make a decision. So, like Councillor Pinnock, I wonder if we should be looking for deferment until that detail comes back. In terms of the Greenbelt arguments, yeah, some strong ideas have been put forward in terms of things that could be potentially done to improve the site. But I just wonder what might be possible in terms of improving the gully. It's described in some places as a waste, you know, and I wonder if that is an accurate description of this gully. So could more work be done linked to landscape improvement, environmental improvement, which obviously is becoming much more important in terms of agricultural strategy rather than this work taking place. So I still have an open mind on this, and I do feel, along with Councillor Pinnock, that we need some more information.
Right. Any more? Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, the point has already been made that this is not a quarry. It's merely altering the contours of the land, admittedly at a place where a gully has already been created, possibly as a result of mining activity in the past. I am concerned about the stability of either the land as it is at the moment, or indeed of any land that is infilled by this purpose. You haven't got solid rock to put it next to. As far as I can make out, it's nearly all a relatively soft material that's involved. And I re-emphasize the fact that we haven't got information in the report to show which is true, the officer's point of view or the contractor's point of view about available space. I know some of this might be commercially confidential, but I think we have ways of dealing with that. But I think we do need as much information as possible in order to make a decision. I don't think we should approve it without knowing more about all the background. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Sandro. Julia, can you throw some light on this? Because I think we're all a bit in the same boat.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I think from hearing sort of what members' discussion and sort of the various queries being raised there, I think members you want to see that further evidence to say like whether there's sufficient capacity there. So that's in terms of a waste needs assessment, and that is something that we've not included in the report itself, as you've stated, and I think it is something that members do need to be fully aware of and do need to be fully informed of before you do make a decision. So I think in terms of the suggestions which some members have discussed about deferring the application to enable officers to provide you with a waste needs assessment, I think that would be a sensible approach in this instance. But like I say, I'll leave it to members to consider that if that's the choice that you want to make.
Thanks, Julia. Well, members, I think we need a waste needs assessment, do we?
Yeah.
Really, and then defer it on that reason, let it come back and then take a decision next time around, if that's what you're all in favour of doing.
I'll second that.
Were you proposing that, Councillor Hall? Right, I think
Donna?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If we're going to go down the deferral route to get the waste assessment, can it also be discussed about maybe implanting more trees up there as well? Just to, because I still think that might be a good idea.
Fazana.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, with regards to Councillor Bellamy's point for further planting or additional planting, can I just point out that the proposed woodland planting is to compensate for the loss of habitat and biodiversity interests within the site, as is the heathland restoration. So the biodiversity proposals are for compensatory loss. Whether we can seek further additional woodland planting, that's really something that we can put forward to the applicants. Can I, through you, Chair, can I just raise a couple of issues or address some points that have been raised through the debate?
Yeah.
So with regards to the waste needs assessment, the speakers did mention that they've considered a number of quarries that were referenced within the report. Those quarries referenced within the report was just giving some examples. They weren't a whole list or suite of all the quarries or landfill sites. Particularly, there wasn't any reference made to waste safeguarded sites. I think the evidence needs to be provided into or as to whether the owners of those waste safeguarded sites have been approached and what the outcome is for reusing those or using those sites. With regards to waste being transported, exported nationally or even regionally, it is expected waste to be transported. It's a regional and national matter, so therefore in terms of vehicle trips or the impact on air quality from long trips is not really relevant in this case, because it is accepted and it is government and policy requirements that waste can be transported regionally and nationally. Just to also point out, there have been actually 10 objections which are listed within the committee report. I think there was reference that there was no objections. I think that's it for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Rosanna. Right, members, who wants to move it? Councillor Walker, you're moving deferral.
Yes, I will do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. Just check up with Julia and Rosanna. Reasons given adequate, good enough?
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. So, so it's in terms of to undertake the waste needs assessment, and then to also have a discussion with the applicant with regard to sort of the additional tree planting as part of like a landscaping scheme, I suppose, of an enhanced landscaping scheme.
Yeah.
Thank
right.
you, Chair.
We'll move to a vote. Richard.
Thank you very much. So this is a vote for deferral and for the reasons as outlined by Julia. Councillor Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Stockholm.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For.
And Councillor Hall.
For.
So that's applications deferred.
Right. Next up, page 83. This is, we're revisiting Dewsbury, Owl Lane. Is it Matthias that's doing this one, or?
It's Sarah, Chair.
Sarah?
And Matthias.
It's all yours. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just opening the, just bringing up the title page. That doesn't seem to be, I don't know if you can see that. Right. Thank you, Chair. So my name is Sarah Longbottom. I'm a Deputy Team Leader and the Case Officer for this application. So the purpose of the report before members is to set out the reasons for refusal decided upon by members of the Strategic Planning Committee on the 27th of January in relation to the application for restaurant and drive-through, and to advise members of the evidence base for each reason in order for members to determine the most robust reason for refusal to defend the decision against any subsequent appeal. Members did not have the full wording of their proposed reasons for refusal at the time of the January committee. So to clarify, members are not being asked to redetermine the application, but to ensure an effective, efficient and rational approach in line with planning appeal good practice. So the report advises members to consider refining their objections to the application to those matters which the Council has technical evidence to defend and which are most likely to be sustained, which in this case officers consider to be the reason on public health grounds. And the wording of that reason is set out as reason number 4 within the report, and it's also included within the update. Members can choose to refine their reasons or retain their initial concerns in full. However, do so with a full understanding of what evidence officers can support the grounds with and the reasonableness of those grounds for refusal should the applicant appeal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Sarah. Members, over to you. We're being asked, I've no doubt you've got it, that we're being asked to reconsider our reasons for refusal last time around. I don't know, it's entirely up to you what you want to do, whether you want to throw everything at number 4, which is public health, or whether you want to still stick by antisocial behaviour, noise, traffic, highways issue, littering, all that kind of things. It's entirely up to you. Matthias?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. We're only here to advise you. You've made your decision and we fully agree and respect that, but we're here to advise you on the reasonableness and the appropriateness of those arguments. It's good practice at appeal. So simply, if you want to stick with those 4 reasons, and I understand you may, we'll do our best for you at appeal, but I just can't give you a good advice that we will be able to defend those successfully. But if you want to, it's your decision. So I'm happy to answer any questions. We don't want to revisit the debate on the application. merely to offer you the opportunity to refine, if you want to, those reasons down to what we can reasonably evidence and substantiate. But it is your decision, and we'll respect whatever you want to do, and we'll do our best thereafter. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Matthias. Councillor Patrick.
Thanks, Chair. We had the summary at the top of the meeting about the appeals and successes and failures, both from officer decisions and member decisions. And I think it's fair to say that officers can lose appeals based on officer decisions, as well as members losing appeals on members' decisions. Some of those decisions which will presumably have been decisions contrary to the officer recommendation. So just setting it in that context. When we put together a decision, we often have more than one reason. Not always, but often have more than one reason. When appeals are heard by planning inspectors, they don't always uphold every single reason or dismiss every single reason, but they look at them and they come to a conclusion. And we've all read planning inspector reports. So my sort of question really would be, if we left all four in, would it make any difference? Because if the planning inspector decided that 1 to 3 were weak and 4 were strong, and his overall decision was to dismiss the appeal, then what difference does it make taking 1 to 3 out?
Is that for me to answer, Chair?
It's for anyone.
Yeah.
It makes a difference in terms of length of inquiry and costs, effectively. I mean, as Matthias said, we will produce evidence to defend or try to defend certain the reasons that have been put forward, but that's likely to be an outside third-party consultant who will be able to examine the submitted highways and noise assessment in a forensic way and find discrepancies and differentiate that finding from that of the applicants. That will take more time and more costs. And if we were to accept that for 1 to 3 reasons we wouldn't produce evidence because we think they're weaker, that doesn't mean to say that the applicant won't do that, and those costs will still be there to be paid for by the council. So effectively, it's in terms of cost, really. You're quite right, some reasons are weaker than others, but good practice for the inspectorate is that parties should try to reduce the areas of dispute as much as possible, reduce inquiry time, and basically have a more rational and efficient process.
Can I come back, Chair?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't really answer what I was asking. But if that is, even on the back of that, I could say that this must happen for just about every appeal. So in future, Chair, are we going to have these kind of reports for every decision we make, coming back to take bits out or strengthen other bits? Because if we are, I think that's going to make the whole process a little bit tricky. I'm trying to be polite.
Yeah. Mohan.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think as far as I can remember, this is the second time this application coming back, which we, the Strategic Planning Committee, refused it. I think you might remember a few years back, 4 or 5 years ago, we were in a similar situation where we refused one application, and Dewsbury, I think it was open green space somewhere, and the developer took us to appeal, and we lost the appeal, and it cost us about 70-80 grand, I think nearly $750,000. Then there was another application, same time, pending for appeal decision. Then we got the second application, we got the professional advice from our own officer to recall that application again. He said they might be unable to defend that application in the appeal, and it will cost another 70-80 grand to counsel. So that time I remember we met again, Heavy Bullen, and I was member of that committee that I'm doing soap for someone, and we actually reverse our decision on some condition, not straight away, on some condition, yeah? If it, the developer come back with some more information. So we are facing, I think, similar situation here. We refused this application not too far long ago, yeah, I think in January, yeah. And it was a refuse on ground of traffic congestion on the junction with all lanes somewhere, yeah, and antisocial behavior around the proposed site. Now, the applicant coming back or would like to come back only with the few amendment, no, just only one few amendment as far as I can read on here. He say he can reduce the opening hour from morning and evening, close and but it did not say applicant about other, how he can control the antisocial behavior around the if it happen if we approve the application, yeah. So they need to look some more. Can the applicant provide some security camera around the building, around the area there? Can he put some more contribution to ease the traffic on those junctions? Then if he come back, I think we look into the application. That's my decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, to me, to be honest, I think we need to stick to all the reasons that we did for refusal for this. I think the highways is, you know, the congestion and everything else is just as important as the health. I feel at the moment like we're being held to ransom by the, you know, by the applicant. It's like, you know, we're gonna go for appeal, which we probably expected that they would do, and they, you know, now coming back and saying, you know, if you go with this and you go with that, and we'll go for costs and this, that, and the other. So I would stick with all the reasons we give for refusal. I think that could be used, you know, I think they all should be looked at because we have more than one reason. You know, and it wasn't just one reason, and I think they all affect this application. So, like I said, I think we should go with them all. It may be more work for the officers to try and defend, but that's what officers are there to do. So, thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Donna. Matthias.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee. I hear what you're saying. I think what you just have to understand when it comes to a planning appeal is the inspector will simply say, what evidence do you have to substantiate that reason for refusal? Present it, allow it to be examined in public, allow it to be considered, and if you haven't got any evidence, you have to be honest and say that as well. So if you put on a reason, if you put your decision notice out with 4 reasons for refusal,
and we aren't able to evidence some part of those, then that is a grounds for acting unreasonably. We do have evidence for one of the reasons, there's no doubt about it. And just to be abundantly clear, this isn't a decision to reverse what committee did on the 27th. This is simply about good practice to refine. If you want us to stick with them, we will do our best. But as you've got a report in front of you, as well as the update, that sets out what our specialist people in those fields of concern were able to find. And if they haven't got anything, they can't create evidence, and you wouldn't expect them to do that. So all I would say to you is, we will do whatever you want us to do, but we probably can't do a compelling case on 3 of those grounds. So if we go forward, we can put out all 4 reasons, but you just have to recognise that some of those reasons may not be seen to be reasonable. The 4th reason is reasonable because it's evidence-based. So it could still be a successful appeal, but costs can still be awarded against the council for acting unreasonably on other elements of the decision. I hope that helps. Whatever you want to do, we'll do whatever you think. Thank you, members.
Thanks, Matthias. Councillor Patrick.
I was gonna say let the others go first. Didn't think anybody else was going to speak.
Right.
But,
Andrew, then Councillor Walker, and then back to Councillor Patrick.
I think I'm going to put forward a contrary view to what's been expressed by members so far, and that is that I think we should go for the reason that for which we have got evidence, and it's only in this plan that we've got reasons like that for refusing, for dealing with planning applications relating to fast food outlets. And I think that because the evidence can be produced for the area concerned, but incidentally, I don't particularly like the use of the word deprived. Thank you very much. But the other text, it can be evidenced, and I think that that we can certainly substantiate that, and I suppose in a way, well, particularly if you think about antisocial behaviour, it can be quite difficult to quantify before the event, unless you've got some evidence of what's going on and around that site now. But of course, it would be different once any development takes place. So I think, I personally think that we should stick with what the officers are recommending.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, very, very brief. I really agree with what Andrew has just said. I think it's going to put us in a difficult position going into an inquiry if officers genuinely feel that there is no evidence to support those first 3 reasons that we brought up for our refusal. So to give ourselves more chance of winning an appeal, I would go with the officer recommendation, just to focus on the 4th thing, the issue of public health. Thanks, Chair.
Rob. Thank you. I'll go to Carol and then go back to Councillor Patrick.
Thanks, Chair. I haven't said anything up until now because I actually abstained on the application when it came in front of us. But I do feel that we should, I mean, on any application, not just this one, we shouldn't go on reasons which we cannot substantiate, which it sets a really bad precedent, I think, to do that. I think more credibility will be given to the reasons. If we can really substantiate, more credibility will be given to those sort of reasons and other appeals in the future. And it isn't just a question of the inspectorate. It is also a question of how we come across to developers, the public, etc. I mean, we are meant to be. We're not meant to be political. We're meant to be honest and open. And I think, so we should really only go with reasons where we can really substantiate our reasons for doing that. So I would, well, if I don't still abstain, I will vote with the officer recommendations.
Thanks, Carol. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's unfortunate that this has come. It sets up a debate about planning committees, officer recommendations and appeals. And I think it's something that as a council we need to have a debate about, because I think for a long time it's not been done in a satisfactory way. I can remember going back a few years now, 3 or 4 years, discovering that appeals were being submitted by this local planning authority that were simply just the officer's report, which was the original officer's report, which was a recommendation that then the committee had gone against. And it gave the inspector no chance at all other than to say, for example, the officer's recommendation was approval, and the committee went for refusal. The original report was simply submitted with a covering note to the planning inspector, gave the planning inspector no evidence to the contrary. So he just overturned the committee recommendation. And I looked into this, and I wasn't happy about it, as you can imagine. And things were changed on a local level, such that now ward councillors, certainly in Owen Valley South, I don't know if it applies to the whole of Kirklees, get a chance to see the appeal report that's written. But you know, that in itself raises huge questions, because obviously you have this situation where the officers produce a report to committee. We all see it. It's a professional report. They produce a recommendation based on the information in front of them. Those reports are not particularly unbiased. They are based on that recommendation. We all accept the reasons why. That's the profession. That's the sort of professional way. And then we come to a situation where we might disagree, and then we're asking the same officers to come up to help us to find reasons to overcome, to go the other way, to make a contrary decision to what they're trying to achieve. That is a really difficult thing for anybody to do. So in some ways, I'm not surprised we're sitting here reconsidering this, but I don't want to see more and more of these happening. And I think we need to have that debate as a council, as a local planning authority, and I think we need somehow to do a better job than we're doing at the moment. But I won't be supporting the officer recommendation. I think we need to be strong.
Matthias.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief. There will be a report written to defend the council's reason for refusal on this case, because the original recommendation was an approval, of course. So there will be a full report written to the planning inspector setting out the case. This is simply the practice of refining that, if that's what members want us to do. And as a general point, I don't do this exercise lightly. I would not seek to challenge members' decisions. I would only seek if I felt my professional judgment and that of my team is that we just can't substantiate some of those grounds. I would be failing in my duty if I didn't report that to the chair of the committee. So it isn't something I do lightly. I think it's quite a brave action for us to have to come back, and it is something that we would only ever do in these exceptional types of circumstances. And sometimes members, you have refused things, or officers have refused things, and we haven't substantiated this appeal, and we have lost on costs as well. That happens, but where we can avoid that, because we've looked into the future about what evidence we've got, it must be good practice, and it's fair, and it's open, and it's transparent. And that's all the planning system has to be. And you don't win everything and you don't lose everything, but you can be seen to be fair. And that's all I want my service to offer these members, and to offer the planning service, which is what puts the public, gives them confidence in the planning system, that it's a fair system, even if you don't get the outcome you want. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Matthias. I mean, in lots of respects, I back up what Matthias has said. But one thing I would certainly not be doing is, because we've refused it on 4 different grounds last time, I want to make sure that something sticks. And I understand what officers are saying. If we still stand by what we refused it on last time, costs escalate, etc. I'm not here to start having Kirklees at appeals and for us to be, for want of better words, as backsides kicked when we don't need it. But I certainly think that we're as well sticking with at least one item. So it's going to be over to you. We're going to have to take a vote on what you want to do. I think I've roughly got the gist of which way that it's going to go. We need it wording properly, whether we stick for all items or whether we will go for one. And the one that I've got me marker on is public health, to be honest with you.
Chair, if I could interject, there is a recommendation in the update set out fully.
We could vote on that if that's what member wanted.
I mean, if members are happy with that update.
You need a mover and a seconder.
Could you read it out? Could you read it out, Richard?
I can do if that,
yeah.
If that helps. Yeah.
Read it out then. Well, everybody at home's clear then.
Yeah. Okay. So just for clarity in the update, the recommendation from officers is to delegate refusal of the application and the issuing of the decision notice to the head of planning and development, that the committee refine their reason for refusal to those which in officers' opinion are the most sustainable in terms of technical evidence, which is as follows: the addition of the proposed restaurant and drive-through in an area where there are higher levels of deprivation combined with high levels of overweight or obese children and adults would not be in the interests of ensuring healthy, active and safe lifestyles, insofar as resisting the location of fast food establishments in areas of poor health, contrary to policy LP 47 of the Kirklees local plan and the aims of chapter 8 of the National Planning Policy Framework. So that's the recommendation.
Thanks, Richard. Just before we go to a vote, Councillor Walker, you've indicated.
Yeah, well, I suppose it needs somebody to propose that, doesn't it? So I'm just saying I'm willing to propose the acceptance of that. Yeah. Thanks, Rob.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. Right, we'll go to a vote.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So this is the vote to proceed on the basis of that recommendation I've just read out in the planning update. That one area of refusal. So if we could start please with Councillor Bellamy.
Against, I want all 4.
Councillor Patrick. Councillor Patrick.
Against.
Councillor Patterson.
4.
Councillor Pinnock.
4.
Councillor Sokol.
4.
Councillor Walker.
Sorry, 4.
And Councillor Hall.
4.
Okay, so that recommendation has been approved.
Right. Item 11, this is a pre-app. This is Kirklees College, Halifax Road, Dewsbury. I think it could be Kate.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. I think we're going to call in the applicant and the architect.
Do you want me to do that now, Kate? Yeah.
Yeah, is that okay? So they're in at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely fine. So we'll just go on mute whilst we get hold of the applicant. You can move on now. Yeah.
Thanks, Richard. Are they joined?
Okay, Claire, do you want to do a little introduction or?
Yeah, I'll just do an introduction. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Kate Mansell, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. This is item 11 on the agenda, which relates to a pre-application inquiry that the Council have received for a new police station in Dewsbury. It's proposed on the site of the former Kirklees College, following their relocation to Dewsbury Town Centre. Just move down the slides. So this plan shows the extent of the site. It lies to the east of Halifax Road and is bounded by Stonefield Street to the north, Pyra Street to the east and Carlton Road to the south. The surrounding area is mixed, but it's primarily residential along these adjacent streets. The purple shading on the slide shows the extent of the Northfield Conservation Area, which includes the Oldroyd building within the site, which is here. There is also a listed building to the south. With the exception of the Oldroyd building, which is to be largely retained, the scheme would result in the extensive site clearance and demolition of the college and the construction of new facilities for West Yorkshire Police. The site would accommodate Dewsbury Patrol, neighbourhood policing teams and a public help desk facility, which is presently located at Dewsbury Police Station. It was also housed the district's investigative teams, support staff and the custody suite. The police station would be a 24-hour facility, accommodating just over 600 staff on a shift rota system. The building forms part of plans by West Yorkshire Police to replace their existing out-of-date facilities at Huddersfield and Dewsbury, whilst retaining a continued presence in each town. The report before you today, which is simply for members to note, sets out the main issues that are likely to arise in considering a future planning application. In terms of the local plan, the site is unallocated, so there is no objection in land use terms to the location of the police station. Careful consideration will have to be given to site access points and highway safety, the design of the development and its heritage context, and also the impact of the proposal on surrounding residential properties in particular. In this regard, the applicant has already undertaken a public consultation exercise with local residents to seek their opinions. This is an evolving scheme. What is before you today is not the finished proposal, but it will hopefully be helpful in informing members of the nature of the scheme and the key considerations to be taken into account. I'll now hand over to the project architect, Erin Young, to run you through the scheme. The planning agent, Claire Plant, is also available to answer any questions that you may have. Over to you, Erin.
Okay. Hi everyone, nice to meet you. I'm doing this off my phone, and I thought I was going to be able to see the YouTube video at the same time. So I'm going to have to. I've got the presentation on my laptop, so I'm going to try my best to kind of guide you through that. So if it is working correctly, what you should be able to see in the first page of our presentation was kind of the title page, and then the second page is it's just a map of the wider Dewsbury area. Just
That's
giving
where
you
we are.
a location of the. Sorry.
That's fine. That's where we started, Aaron.
Right. Okay. So yep, you can see the wider site context, what we're dealing with. But it's just north of the Dewsbury Ring Road. So great location in terms of the site, up on Halifax Road. Plenty of local transport facilities, so obviously a train station in the centre, and a couple of bus stops nearby, and one right on the south boundary of the Halifax Road as well. So that's just a more of an overview of the site in the local context, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. Excuse me. So yeah, we have good road connections, good rail connections, and like I said, that kind of very central location. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So the next slide is our site analysis that we've undertaken, and just a kind of diagrammatical overview of such. Obviously, the biggest feature on the site, as it has been occupied by the college, is that of Oldroyd building. And it's a very, very handsome building from 1889, and it's been an institutional building since its inception, and has been with the college until then, and most recently been a college teaching facility and some office and admin facility within that. But within the conservation areas, you'll see on the next slide when we go to that. But you know, as I mentioned, it's a very important building. In very good condition to the elevations of Halifax Road, and particular Carlton Road, are in very good condition. Suffered a large-scale fire back in the late 80s, and had a lot of repair work done to it. So internally, there's a lot of new structural members. New roof was put in place. So luckily, a lot of the main features have been retained, and is something that obviously we'd look to maintain as well and celebrate. But as you can see on this diagram, that footprint of Oldroyd is something that we'd look to retain and repurpose as office building as part of this scheme, which I'll get onto in a minute. As also you can see, the blue arrows are suggesting where the main public access is off Halifax Road at the moment. Again, set away from Oldroyd building is something we're looking to maintain. The rest of the buildings on site, came at later dates throughout time. Some of the more shed-like units to the back came after Oldroyd, a good few years after, and then obviously the larger 6-story building that sits really opposite Oldroyd and kind of dominates it from a massing perspective, and sits on the forefront of Oldroyd is another building which is, could be considered to be beyond its sell-by date. So the opportunities of the site were, and are great in terms of if we look to the demolition of those buildings and the proposals that we could put forward from there. We've got vehicular access to the north from Stonefield Street. Obviously, there's some residential parking which has been mentioned around there, and we've got close proximity to some of those properties south on Stonefield Street. And then we have an existing vehicular access off Carlton Road as well, which does have some 2 control points at the top and bottom of Carlton Road, which one of those barriers I think is broken and out of use at the moment. But we'd be looking to reinstate those, as I'll mention on our proposals. But just to put that context into what is already there, and that vehicular access point in that central location. In terms of the levels of the site are pretty much our biggest challenge. As you know, you'll be well aware of the topography in the local area is challenging at the best of times. From the northwest of the site to the southeast of the site, we've pretty much got a over 20-meter drop in gradient. So levels are a key challenge in terms of the design and how we maximise the use of the site, the massing of the overall proposal, has been the biggest challenge for us as well. Obviously, to not to build up as much and to maximise the use and the footprint of the site as best we can. Also, just on Friar Street, we've got an access road that goes through there, and there's some existing surface car parking to the east, which falls within our site boundary as well. So if we can move on to the next slide. Just an overview of the site area, just to refresh in terms of the visual quality and aspects of it, and just give an overview of where our site boundary sits. The bottom right image being the conservation area, which you can see Old Royd fits into inside that blue shaded area. But again, the site from the central image, you can see the building that came later, probably around the 60s, 70s period. And the sheds to the back, which you can see as well, again, in a bit of a state of disrepair and derelict, and we're hoping to improve on that. So the next slide should hopefully be our overall site plan proposal. So working with West Yorkshire Police, there was part of the brief for the project is for a number of facilities to come onto this site. Obviously, one of which being a custody facility for 30 cells, and all the administration functions functional spaces that come with that from a staffing point of view. And then there's a number of different uniform and non-uniform departments that would move into the site. I also need a public front of house reception where there'll be some consultation rooms and interview rooms for the public to access, and then also a staff entrance. And one of the key items, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and is a big part of the brief is the staff parking. So for development of this nature, with the numbers of staff that are looking to that would be using the site, obviously parking is an essential part of that. So we've looked at using the site as best we can. So we surveyed the site. We surveyed Old Royd with 3D scanning technology that we've used, and we've created a Revit model from that. So we've been able to utilise that in terms of getting the best measurements and dimensions out of that as best we can. We've also done a Matterport survey internally. There's some quite nice features within Old Royd. So that's kind of like a Google Street View, basically of the whole of every single room in Old Royd, so that we can monitor and maintain some of those nice internal features. Starting with Old Royd at the bottom, then for the purposes of the brief, we're looking to use that as office facility. So which it was being used by the college for a lot of spaces as internal office space, and we're not looking to make too many alterations. There will be some internally, just for access and circulation, but we are pretty much bound by a lot of the structural components. There's a lot of structural masonry in there, which is rather difficult to start moving about internally. So from an internal perspective, that's what we're looking at. However, just to put a bit of context, that was putting a bit of context to the block that is to the east of Old Royd, because of the kind of circulation, the stairwells in Old Royd, which a few came at a later date, and the provisions for things like toilets and things of that nature, the building really wasn't meeting the current day demands and standards that we have to adhere to. So particularly for fire and staff provisions for things like toilets and that nature, and lift facilities, for traffic analysis and things like that. So it became quickly quite evident that we needed an extension to Old Royd to have a significant accommodation stair, which would be used as a primary fire escape. New lift facilities and toilet facilities. So they all sit in that rectangle, which is to the right of Old Royd. I'll show you in the elevations in the 3D imagery that we've tried to be as sensitive as possible with our material selection, and also our 3D our form and massing, so to speak. We've stepped back from Old Royd, so there's a little kink there which you can see in the bottom, so that we're not crashing directly into Old Royd with the mass of the stair. There's a glazed setback recess of curtain walling that goes the full height to give it that light touch and separation. And then the rest of that 5-story core extension is a brick. Would be a new brick and potentially a lighter brick to kind of put some contrast and not to compete too much with Old Royd, with some recesses and patterns in the brick and the glazing to break that up a little bit. So that acts as the staff entrance as well. To connect Old Royd to the rest of the facilities that we're putting on site, which is basically the visitor entrance and the custody suite. We again at the front of Old Royd, or what we call the front of Old Royd, to the west, we've set back a single-story visitor entrance. Those who are familiar with custody blocks tend to be single-story facilities. So the rest of the facility to the north is a single-story block of accommodation. The kind of grey rectangle that sits in the middle, that is another story of accommodation above that, but that is purely plant equipment to service the custody block. So you can imagine the cells and the demand and on mechanical and electrical services for that part of the building are quite high. So instead of having them populating the roof, we've got them enclosed in this space, and that's from an acoustic point of view as well, as an aesthetic point of view. So the single-story entrance, we've tried to take the similar approach to what we had to the core that was mentioned at the back end, where we've stepped the single-story extension at the front being the west, stepped it around the corner of the bay window, again just to kind of celebrate Old Royd on the corner, not to compete with it. There's 3 stories in an attic space of Old Royd above that. So we're sitting at a single-story level and hopefully tie in nicely to that. And again, tuck in the junction where we're kind of adjoining Old Royd round the corner behind the bay window, so that when you're driving past, Old Royd is at the forefront and is celebrated within that public landscape that we can see at the front. And public landscape all being designed to prevent any kind of attacks or security. It's all been designed with security in mind. To deter any vehicles being able to drive up to the front door and things of that nature. And one thing we have had to do, just given the nature of the site and the secure aspects, is to bring a vehicle route off Halifax Road, and that is purely for visitor parking at the front, fire tender access and some cycle parking there as well to get access to the visitor entrance and the visitor entrance into custody. To the north, then on Stonefield Street, we've got two roads that are coming off Stonefield Street. And I imagine there'll be a talking point around the displacement of resident car parking there. We're currently undertaking that study at the moment as to how we can, how we'd provide some of those. Sorry.
To interrupt. Chair's indicating, in the next few minutes, can you wrap up the presentation, please?
Yeah, sorry, apologies, I'm rambling on a little bit. So basically the entrance to at Stonefield Street, we're coming in by, will be some of the detainee vehicles will be coming in there to drop off detainees from into the van dock, which is the blocks on top of what is the decked car park to the east. So you can see the car parking space there. We've got rejection lane, and that the farthest vehicle entrance to the left on Stonefield Street is the in and out for the vehicle detainees. The other exit is a rejection lane for anybody who accidentally pulls down there. We've got a full secure fence line around the site. That obviously makes the site very secure from the public, and then you can see the extent of the decked car park to the back there, and the surface car park opposite Prior Street. Sorry. So if we go to the next slide down, we can just see a bit of a comparison from what is the addition from the existing massing on the left. You can see block number 2 is a much larger mass, and the blocks at the back, which are the sheds coming down the back, taking up a lot of the mass on there. And then you can see how this is a slightly older image on the right of where we were previously, but it just gives a nice comparison on screen as to what we're proposing. That single-storey approach that starts off single-storey at Halifax Road, and as you move towards the back of the site, stays at that level, and the deck car park falling below. If we go to the next slide down, you should see a more up-to-date 3D image where you can see the deck car park at the back. You can see the custody block, which is the bit that sticks out on top of the deck car park. You can see our 5-storey extension to the rear, which is, as I mentioned before, is bringing Oldroyd up to standards from all those perspectives that I mentioned previously. We've provided a hip roof to the top of the core extension as a bit of a nod to the tower and the new roof that is on top of Oldroyd, which is quite an interesting shape. So just to be as in keeping in that and not be a more modern rectangular block that's just been dropped on the site. The next slide down should just be the 3D from the other angle, where you can see the single-storey extension. You can see a bit more of that, the copper kind of plant enclosure on top of custody. You can see a bit more of the car park there. And then as we move on to the last slide number 9, you can just see a bit more of a 3D image, which puts it in a bit of context with Oldroyd. You can see the single-storey extension there. There is a hip screen above the single-storey extension because there will be some plant on the roof there, but which is it's going to be screened from the general public's point of view, from everybody's point of view, hopefully. And then just a little bit of a material palette on the right-hand side to show that the type of brickwork that we're looking at. Copper approach to solid paneling and curtain walling, and then a bit of the landscape that you can see there. So sorry, I could talk about this all day for the next 5 hours, but appreciate you guys have had a long day. I did listen into some of the other calls, so yeah, I'll hand over. That's me done.
Thanks. Claire, have you got anything to add to that?
No, nothing to add, Chair. I'm just available for any questions if members have got any questions.
Members, any questions? Mohan.
Thank you, Chair. Very brief. I actually welcome this 2 new police station building to replace the 2 outdated building, and one in Huddersfield and one in Dewsbury. Yeah. Well, one thing, Mr. Chair, I'm not clear about the balance of the police officer in both districts, one in Huddersfield and Dewsbury. Dewsbury one, they are 600 officers, and then Huddersfield, which is they go, you say in the report there another application coming in near future. That will be based only about 200 police officers. I'm not sure how they can police the day-to-day policing in Huddersfield, which Huddersfield is a very large town. Yeah. And only way they will be traveling from Dewsbury to Huddersfield, there Huddersfield Stadium and other things, they create more traffic on the road, you know. I know it's in Kirklees, yeah, but I'm just thinking how they reach that decision. I don't know. Thank you.
Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was interested to hear the speaker say, those of you who are familiar with a custody block. And I thought, does he know something I don't? Looking at the panel, looking at the committee. I'm certainly not familiar with one. Anyway, all joking apart, I've just put materials. I think it's important, you know, for that the materials are right. It looks like it's brick and concrete mainly, apart from the old building. And I think it would, I think get it right, get the materials right, get the design right, give us something that, yeah, we need a police station. A police station needs to be functional. I get all that, but actually give us something that we can look at and say what a fantastic building that is. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah. Right there, Nigel. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, no, I won't say I know Custody Block very well, but I certainly know this site very well. The only comment I would make about the siting is that one of the big advantages of the existing police station in Dewsbury is that it is right in the town centre next to the bus station, and this isn't. It's up a relatively steep hill, and I understand why the site was looked at with favour, because there are huge opportunities there. I listened to the presentation and I was very impressed. But what you can't alter is its location. That's the one big downside, it seems to me. Given everything else, I think what is being proposed could well have our support. And I take Councillor Patrick's point about materials. I think that is important, because you've got two Victorian buildings next to, one on the site, the other next to the site, which need to be at least slightly respected and not done violence to. So I think, apart from the fact that it's not in the town centre and up a steep hill, and it is on a steep hill as well, as the presenter alluded to, 20-metre drop from one side to the other is quite considerable. I presume, incidentally, that at some point we're going to get a redevelopment proposal for Huddersfield Police Station. So I will await that one with interest. But I could support this.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Walker.
Right, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I generally think this looks quite a promising proposal. At the beginning of today's session, before we went public, Matthias was talking about our job being to encourage the highest standards in terms of developments that are coming before the committee. And I think that is really important. So I support comments that have already been made by Councillor Patrick and Councillor Pinnock, both about materials, and I think equally important is the quality of the design. And that looks, it looks quite promising looking at these original pictures. I'm pleased to see that the Aldroyd building is going to be retained and that new developments will be designed to blend in and complement that existing, quite a distinguished Victorian building. I also hope that the opportunities are taken to develop the building to very high environmental standards. This is mentioned, I think, in section 5.38 of the report. And I think as we're developing public buildings like this, we should take the opportunity to set high standards that can be copied and emulated by other developments within Kirklees. Yeah, so generally very positive. I do think the point that Councillor Sokal made, which is not really about this building, but about the deployment of police resources across Kirklees, is quite an interesting point. and it echoes some of my concerns about things like what's happening to health resources, where those seem to be being moved out of Huddersfield and relocated in other places. But generally positive. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you. Yeah, just to echo really what's already been said, I agree with Councillor Pinnock. It being out at town centre is certainly an issue, and it is steep hill going up there, which makes it not over accessible, I would have thought, for public. And when all said and done, a police station is basically a public building, so I would have concerns with that. And I also agree that, you know, it's got to be built right, and the materials have got to be right if it is going to be in that location. But like I said, I've got concerns with where it is. I think it would have been, you know, if any possibility of getting it into the town centre at Dewsbury, I think would have been a better option. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got a couple of very quick comments. I mean, one, obviously, I'm pleased to see the older building retained. And then secondly, I'm really pleased actually that it seems that a lot more open space, not necessarily green space, but there is some green space, but the whole site is an improvement for that part of Dewsbury. And as far as I say, it's more open, it's light, and hopefully attractive. And there is that quite a bit of provision of green space as well as just open space. And then thirdly, actually, I just have to say about accessibility. I mean, no wonder they're moving from Huddersfield Town Police Station in the middle of Huddersfield, because accessibility to that police station, I mean, okay, you may be able to get by on foot to it from the train station or the bus station, and it's very close to the courts. But other than that, it's absolutely murder for accessibility. I mean, the whole of Huddersfield Town Centre, well, that part of Huddersfield is clogged up with police vans all day. There's just no room to park them on within the building, etc., etc. So I don't think it necessarily needs to be as close to a town centre. I think policing these days is somewhat different, and I'm pleased to see this new development. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Any more comments? Any more questions? No? Kate, I don't know if you have anything to wrap up with.
I can just come back on a couple of points. I think in terms of materials, we've discussed that with the applicant, and you obviously need to look very carefully at materials in this context, taking into account the conservation area and the listed buildings and the stones. So that's something we will do. We've asked the applicant for a climate change statement, and we've emphasised the need to look at low carbon technologies, reducing energy demands, etc. So that's definitely been part of our brief to them. In terms of the siting, obviously, I think West Yorkshire Police looked at about 30 sites before they have come upon Kirklees. It's very difficult for them to find a site that suits their needs. I think it's close to transport facilities. There's a bus stop. They've put in the accessible parking for visitors, so they've tried to address that as far as they can. I'm not going to comment on deployment of police resources. I think that's definitely beyond my scope as a planning officer. Whether Claire wants to add anything to that, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Kate. Claire, anything to finish off with?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief. Deployment of officers, this is very much a replacement of existing provision. So I'm not equally as Kate able to comment on the higher level operations of the police department, but it's replacement for existing provision. So in that respect, it's very much business as usual in terms of what's there already. We've certainly had a lot of dialogue on materials and the quality of the building, and we're really keen to build on the character that Old Royd brings to develop the site. So that's certainly in our focus. So I can reassure members on that front. And I think the last point that I wanted to make in terms of accessibility, we've been advised by our client, West Yorkshire Police, that a lot of the day-to-day policing has actually gone online, much like everyone's experiencing with everything else at the moment. So they see that as a trend that's happening pre-COVID and will continue afterwards. So in terms of their interaction with police, people actually visiting the station sort of ad hoc, the numbers are decreasing, and so in their view, that's less potentially of an issue. But clearly they've kept it in a location that's accessible generally by public transport, etc. So fully take on board the comments that, as Kate said, there's been a very comprehensive site search exercise undertaken to get here. So that will be detailed in the planning application when it comes into you.
Right. Thank you very much, Claire. Thanks, everybody. Now, I know we've been here now for 3 hours. I don't know if anybody wants a 5-minute break. If you do, put your hand up. If you want to crack on, we can. Carry on. Yep. Right.
Okay, so Aaron and Claire are still on. So thank you. Well, I'll turn the call off now, Claire and Aaron. So thanks for your time. Okay. So we're on to the next one.
Right. Final one today. Another pre-app. Greenhead Road, Huddersfield, and this is Greenhead College. Nick, I think it's you.
Yeah.
Check.
Thank you.
You can see my
We
slides.
want to get Simon and Grant in again, yeah?
Yeah, if you want to get them in for now, that's fine as well. While they're being called in, Chair, shall I progress?
It's all yours.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just confirm you can see the slide?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, as stated by Chair, this is a pre-application inquiry. Greenhead College, backed by the Department for Education, are proposing to demolish part of the college's existing buildings, which are considered to be no longer fit for purpose, and the erection of a replacement building. The new building would provide a net increase in floor space to comply with modern standards and to provide improved student facilities. However, the proposal is not intended to increase student numbers. The pre-application has been submitted to gain members' perspective on the current proposal's location and the design of the new building. The applicant will be doing a brief presentation following the overview by officers as well. So just to set out the site constraints, Greenhead College is set within the historic environment. It is within Greenhead Park and New North Road Conservation Area and is adjacent to Springwood Conservation Area. It's also just to the south of Greenhead Park, which is a registered park and garden which hosts several listed buildings within. This current image shows the extent of demolition proposed. including the areas in pink. There we go, there, and there just in the aerial image. The new building is proposed to be sited at the front of the main entrance building. Given the attractiveness and quality of the main entrance building, the proposed proximity and loss of views towards the main entrance building has led to reservations from officers. The main school building is not listed, but is high quality and a factor of the conservation area's value. However, having considered and discounted the other possible locations for a building of this scale, such as adjacent to the boundary with Greenhead Park or on the higher grounds to the west, officers consider this location as being the most preferable option with the least potential to harm the historic environment. Despite this, careful design of the building will be required to minimise the visual impacts of the proposal. This will be elaborated on shortly. On other planning matters, these are detailed within the report before members. In brief, the site is allocated as urban green space and the proposal would represent a departure from the local plan's urban green space policy. Benefits to education on the planning balance may outweigh the proposal's harm to the urban green space. However, the applicant would need to demonstrate this at application stage. For highways, the building would be located upon the current main car park, which is cited here. Parking is proposed to be replaced at a 1-to-1 ratio to retain the current figure of 159 spaces, primarily to the rear. Officers have advised the applicant that a report which evidence this level of parking as being sufficient to serve the college will be needed at application stage. The existing vehicle exit would be turned into a new pedestrian access. A new vehicle access is also shown from Park Avenue. The new car park would necessitate the replacement and reduction in size of the site's multi-use games area. The impact of a reduced sports provision would likely need to be considered. Would likewise need to be considered and justified application stage. These planning matters and other material considerations are elaborated upon within the report, and the applicant has been made aware they will have to be addressed at application stage. Returning to design, this image shows the current iteration of the proposed elevations. The main entrance building can just be seen here, with the next image being a 3D render and shows a relationship of the main building opposite the new. This image shows the approach from the new primary pedestrian access. To minimise the impact on the main entrance block, a cantilever corner is proposed. For materials, the applicant is currently proposing buff brick. These images have been provided for consideration of the material. To end, the main points officers would like members to consider is the building's location and scale, the design and proposed use of brick, and are there any comments on the proposed parking provision and layout. Officers have expressed concerns on aspects of the design and materials. However, officers do accept that the design has been informed by the site's constraints. Furthermore, the proposal would provide educational benefits which would have to be considered in the planning balance. The applicant has prepared a presentation to inform you of their design approach and reasoning. Through you, Chair, I'd invite them in now to speak.
Yeah, all right, Nick.
Hello, Chair, Planning Committee.
Afternoon.
Hello, it's Simon Lett, Principal of Greenhead College. Happy to provide some further context from Greenhead's perspective on this.
Yeah.
So Greenhead is, as many of you know, it's one of the best sixth form colleges in the country, certainly the best locally for A-level provision, which is reflected in the percentage of students who achieve high grades. We're very oversubscribed, very popular, and well respected in Kirklees and beyond. And we play our part in ensuring that young people in Kirklees are able to obtain high standards at A-level and go on to destinations that are to the benefit of the local area. The biggest area of our work is maths and science. It's the science that's currently causing us a problem. Our science provision is taught in a building which was erected in the 1960s and is out of date, in very poor condition, as it's in a very degraded state. So we were thrilled to be announced as one of the first 50 schools, colleges nationwide to benefit from government investment to improve the condition of its buildings. And that'll mean that our sciences, biology and chemistry, will be taught in modern, up-to-date facilities. There'll be sufficient social space for students who come to Greenhead College. So we're really excited to be working with the DfE and partners on this development. I think it's going to be to the considerable advantage of young people in Kirklees.
Thanks, Simon. Can you hear me okay, Chair?
Yes, fine, yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name's Grant Sellers. I'm one of the architects working on the scheme. Nick's put up on the screen a number of slides, which I'll just talk you through as quickly as I can. So on screen, we've got a small sample of some of the site analysis that's been prepared in informing the design proposals. Key considerations that have been considered have included the site setting within the local conservation area, the relationship of the site to the Grade 2 listed Greenhead Park, which sits to the northern boundary of the college site, the wider heritage consideration in the local area, key views to the site from the surrounding park and street, the mature planting to the site boundary, and also the existing access and egress of staff and students onto the site. The site's topography, you can see on the section across the bottom of the slide, shows how the site steps up from Park Avenue to the east boundary up towards the west. In effect, it's made up of 3 plateaus. The lower eastern plateau on the right side of the slide accommodates the existing car park and maths and physics building. The site then steps by pretty much a building story to the middle plateau, which has the main body of existing buildings, and then a further story step to the western plateau, which accommodates the existing pitches. Next slide, please, Nick. Alongside understanding the site and as it currently stands, we've sought to understand how the site has evolved over the years. It originally housed a substantial family estate, which was developed a number of times. The latter incarnation is Greenhead Hall, which is still on the site until the early 1900s. And you can see this in the top right of the slide. The hall was demolished to make way for Huddersfield High School for Girls, the main building of which still sits on the site and Nick referred to earlier. It was opened in 1908 and later became part of the Greenhead College campus. The site continued to be developed over the years, and a further sort of 8 or so blocks have been added to meet the educational needs of the town and surrounding areas, but this has been done in a rather sort of piecemeal way as funding has become available. So this project seeks to sort of reunify the site. And beyond the site, we have to be very mindful of the heritage assets that sit both within the park and beyond. Next slide, please, Nick. In addition to those wider site considerations, we needed to consider the key drivers for the college, and just for your information, committee, the college were really keen to obviously to deliver excellent education and have an environment that supports them in doing that for the young people of Huddersfield. The campus at the moment is rather disjointed, so they sought to reconnect the campus and make it a really logical set of spaces, create usable external spaces that the campus currently lacks, and minimise the impact on the delivery of education for the young people currently at the college, make the site safer and secure, and maintain the right amount of pitch area required for the curriculum and retain existing parking numbers. The new build will predominantly provide teaching accommodation, which is 15 specialist labs and classrooms, along with support spaces and associated dining and study spaces that you would expect to see on a post-16 environment like this. The funding is structured to replace the existing provision of modern to a modern standard. So whilst the student roll doesn't go up, it is a slight increase in area to provide the right type of spaces. And also the DFE funding has allowed for as an additional allowance to deliver a detailed sustainability brief. This is to drastically reduce the energy and carbon that would be used by the building's operation, and also to enhance the biodiversity on the site and improve the environmental infrastructure. At the outset, the design team undertook an extensive appraisal to develop options on the site to identify the proposal with the least impact on the local area. We explored the site access from the roads to the north, east and south, and permanent access was deemed to only be viable from the east or the south. We also tested 3 development areas on the site, and these were the western pitch plateau, which is on the left of the plan on the screen there, and to the north of the site in the centre, in the location where the buildings are to be demolished, and then the eastern car park site. Next slide, please, Nick. So hopefully you can now see the master plan. Through this appraisal, the eastern car park was selected as the proposed development area. Crucially, this located the main building, which is the larger yellow block on the plan you can see, on the lowest part of the site, minimising the visual impact from the surrounding areas. It also located the new building away from Greenhead Park to the north. It also, and finally, it sort of allowed us to remove the sea of parking on arrival and introduce a new pedestrian plaza to the front of the new block, which would wrap up between the old and new buildings, creating a new public realm. We were really conscious of maintaining good sightlines to the existing entrance of the former high school building and its eastern frontage, given its historic significance. So the new plaza runs up towards the entrance, and it allows views to open up as you circulate through the site. Working clockwise from that entrance plaza, you can see the visitor car parking, which is centrally located just to the south of the existing buildings. And then there's the new parking and pitch on the upper plateau to the west. There's a new teaching and social space externally between the existing buildings, which is probably easily recognised by the circular motif on the plan. And then there's service access taken from Park Avenue, which serves the new kitchens and plant rooms and moves all that important servicing traffic away from student movements. The yellow block in the centre of the plan is a new infrastructure that links the existing blocks. And the site layout also allowed us to create a site layout during construction that would mean that there'd be a very clear segregation between construction and student movements. Across the overall site master plan, there are also a number of measures to enhance the biodiversity and ecology across the site. Slide 5, please, Nick. This just gives you a flavour of the way the building's laid out, and I won't dwell on this, but the main building is arranged across 4 floors. On the ground, it has the main student entrance, and that's into a double height space, which links the lower and upper and middle plateau with the main body of buildings on. And it also provides the majority of dining and social study provision for the students. Level 1 contains the main body of general teaching accommodation wrapped around a main hall space, and level 2 and 3 provide science for biology and chemistry and the associated support spaces that they require. Next slide, please, Nick. Then considering the elevations and massing of the building, considering how we treat the building's mass, we've taken influence from the former high school for girls' building. The elevation of that's on the left, and there's also a photo to the top right of the sheet. And the archive photos of Greenhead Hall, which used to sit on the site, and they're sat in the middle of this sheet, along with influences from the local context in terms of colour, texture, and tone. The intent is to utilise a simple palette of elegant and an elegant palette really, and avoid unnecessary detail and ornamentation to ensure that the new building's subservient and complementary to the former high school building rather than trying to compete. The material palette's been selected that is respectful to the predominant tones and colours of the local stone and slate that you find in the surrounding area, and it's got a rich variety in texture, again, that you find with the sort of stone and finishes within the area. It's a masonry product that pays homage really to those tones and textures, but doesn't seek to replicate in a modern building, and that's really to try and avoid a pastiche. And you can see from the example in the bottom right corner of the product set against a similar stone building. The windows to the elevations have taken cues really from the high school and the former Greenhead Hall. The elevations are set to reflect the strong horizontal datums, which you can see with the red dashed lines across the photos and elevations, and set by the consistent window heads, eaves, and parapets on the existing buildings. A vertical order in terms of the blue dashes are set with the windows stacked vertically to utilise a regular module, and that proportion can change with the requirements of the building. Next slide, please, Nick. And you can see the outcome of that and the influence here on the visuals and the elevations, where you can see the order running through the scheme, which is very intentional. Again, it's really to try and be calm and elegant and not seek to upstage the historic buildings and be respectful to them. As part of the brief and the funding requirements, we need to deliver a net zero carbon building in operation. At its most simple, that means the building has to be designed to use very little energy in terms of all the energy demands you have in a college, such as heating, lighting, and catering, or the computers. And then it needs to have sufficient on-site generation, such as solar panels, to offset that remaining carbon. In addition to this, we have to meet very clear criteria in terms of the internal environment, such as daylight, ventilation. And this is to ensure that the college is a really good environment for teaching and learning. And things like high levels of carbon dioxide due to poor ventilation can really have a negative impact on learning. So all these factors have influenced the design of the elevations, and particularly in this case, the roofscape is really important part of that. It's been developed to deliver some environmental benefits. The roof's proposed as what's called a biosolar roof, which is a combination of solar panels which generate electricity, and then a biodiverse green roof, which will provide a valuable habitat and also reduce cooling and attenuate rainwater. So it's got multiple positives for the local environment. And as a result, we've proposed a parapet roof to ensure that the roof can be safely maintained, and all these working elements of the roof are not visible from the ground. And the parapet also reflects the approach that was adopted on many of the historic buildings in the town centre, including the former Greenhead Hall that we've seen the images of. And it's quite reflective of the streetscape you see on somewhere like John William Street. When you're walking down, you read the head of the parapets as they terminate very clearly along the skyline. And then just verifying that there's substantial work's gone on in the background around the sort of safe delivery of the scheme. And I won't dwell on this, but we've been working with a contracting partner who have developed a construction method statement and plan to really deliver this to minimise the impact on the local surrounding area. That's me. Thank you for your time, committee.
Thank you. Members, have you got any questions? Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Welcome renewal. It's fantastic. Looks okay. They quite like the inside of the new building, not so keen on the outside. I don't really want to upset the architect, but I probably will. It looks like a brick box to me. And whilst I'm trying to understand how he's gone from, Councillor Pinnock, you may laugh. Whilst I'm trying to understand how he's gone from the elegance of the old buildings to the new buildings, I can't quite grasp that. I would, you know, the university had an awful lot of brick boxes, which it's done an awful lot of work to modernise and facelift, and I think it's done it to good effect by and large. And in other parts of Huddersfield, we have some large brick boxes which are empty, and I think a lot of us would like to see them come down. So I'm a little bit disappointed that the architecture on the externals of the new building isn't a lot better, and there's a little bit more flair involved. I get the functionality of it. I get all the stuff about carbon reduction and photoelectric cells and all that sort of thing. They're great, but it would be nice if we could just have a little bit more flair to the externals of the architecture. Thank you.
Carol.
Thanks, Chair. Well, my comments on the whole are already in the report, but I will reiterate them. I mean, firstly, and I don't. This is, I think, is accommodated, but there is a quite an important statue on the wall. I think it's on the Rostron building at the moment. It used to be on the Science building, which is called the Silent Student. And I believe, well, I hope it's the same statue, but looking at the plans, it says possible relocation of the statue. So I hope that statue doesn't disappear and is more prominent for the public to be able to see, not just the students and staff at Greenhead. So that's my first comment. My second comment is I think the treatment of the parking on site and the vehicle access, both of cars and service vehicles, is a lot better than certainly it currently is. I mean, at the moment you have got students and cars, etc., vying for the same piece of pathway, and it's I don't know if there's been any accident, but certainly it's an accident waiting to happen. So it's really good to see that both cars and service vehicles are moved away from pedestrian movement on site. But having said that, I mean, that's where I come to my most important concern. And I note that it says, or it's been said, that student numbers won't increase and that the car parking numbers will remain the same. But currently, the parking is a really, really, really big issue around the site, off-site, not on-site, but off-site. Students, it's really funny. You can always tell when they sort of turn 18 because they obviously get given a car when they become 18, and suddenly throughout the year you find the roads for quite some way back from the college filling up with students' cars. And you know they're students' cars because they disappear again at half term and Easter breaks and all the like. But by the summer, There's an awful lot of student cars around Marsh and Greenhead. And I'm particularly worried about the park itself, because there's so much commuter parking around the park as well, that it really prevents users of the park from actually being able to park anywhere near it, especially those who are more elderly or with a disability, and young families for that matter. I've often seen young families having to park a good half-mile away from the park to be able to go and use the park, and it's not on, because as I said, it's with students and commuters taking up those parking spaces around the park. Now, obviously, we can do something about that, but certainly I would like these plans as well to consider some sort of traffic management scheme, or to make sure in some way or other that the college is working with the council to make sure that we have got, or users of the park have got access to the park. Because at the moment it is very, very difficult. So those are my comments. Mainly positive, but I am really worried about the car parking. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to see this investment in Greenhead College. I think it's an excellent, very successful college. And I think there is a genuine need to improve the quality and the size of the teaching accommodation. And I think looking at the report, the reference to the sciences at the college, which are extremely strong, and the need to have better facilities for the students, I think that's a very compelling case. I welcome the commitment to high environmental standards. I think the kind of proposals that you've got for the photovoltaic cells and the green aspects to the roof sound really interesting. A zero carbon building sounds great. I do, however, share some of the concerns that are raised by Councillor Patrick. I think the outside of the building does look a little bit utilitarian, really. I would like to see something that had a bit more flair and ambition. And I also share the view that with the university, a lot of the developments that they've undertaken seem to have managed to achieve this. I think sometimes in the past, with the development of things like college buildings within Huddersfield, there has been a real constraint in terms of funding. And I hope in this case that the funding will be available, that will help us to help the development of a building that enhances the town centre. Because we certainly need that. It's coming back to this point again, that we need some quality buildings in Kirklees that improve the quality of our environment. But generally very positive about this.
Thanks, Rob. Mohan.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I actually welcome the proposed new block on the Greenhead College to replace the old one. But like my colleague Councillor Pattison, I have a main concern about the parking issue by the student and by the staff. It's not only student, it might be the staff as well. Right from the beginning in the morning, all the side around Greenhead Park is full up with student parking. Even further up in Marsh, Greenhead Road is just in front of that Greenhead College. They always park up with the students or staff cars. I welcome there is a increase of parking spaces, they're showing in the belt in the side, but it's still not good enough. I think they need to look into that. Either they should hire or rent a multi-story car park in bus station in Huddersfield to provide some parking students if they can't do anything there, because there are more spaces. They have to look into that, and we can't force them. Other thing is access in and out from the Greenhead College is terrible. We had a lot of complaints from the public and the parents from the students who go there. The junction with the park, I think it's called Park Avenue, and the Greenhead Road need to look and need to improve the junction. But I think there should be some travel plan on there. They need to send. Last one, as Councillor Patrick and Councillor Walker has said, the building outside exterior side, it's not very attractive. We need to look something in there to be attractive. Passerby people come there, look at the, oh yes, it's a beautiful. But I think there is a need to relook at that. So that's my remarks. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mohan. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Can I deal with the design thing first? Because I think that the trouble with these representations of what it's going to look like is it can make it, as Councillor Patrick has said, look very bland and slab-like. But if you look at those representations, even the old building looks bland and slab-like as well, and it isn't like that at all. It's probably got more windows than are indicated there, or at least that's how it appears. So I think that will get refined, particularly as the texture of the construction materials is taken into account. So I think that it won't be quite as bad as it looks. Although some element of detailing wouldn't go amiss, provided it doesn't add to the cost. But generally speaking, I think we've got what could be an excellent plan, and that will enhance, I hope, the college's work over the next however many years. But can I just make a point about a travel? Well, what would be a travel plan? I think quite a lot of Greenhead's students come from North Kirklees, but Greenhead doesn't provide any transport, whereas New College in Huddersfield does, and that can put some people off. But alternatively, if you provide a school bus service, it might well take some of the parking problem away. I'm not naive enough to suggest that it will take it away completely. It will only do something to alleviate it. But I think certainly as part of the planning application, when it comes in, that consideration be given to the college trying to sort out its transport requirements, particularly for people who come relatively long distances. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. I get what Rob's saying. I think one of the things is when you come into Huddersfield and you're coming down by Sainsbury's and you see that new building, what put up at university. From seeing that just being a drawing to actually seeing it, I think is that. Don't forget this committee as well that passed that planning application. I think that's a marvellous achievement. Is there anybody, Nick, Simon or Grant, just wants to finish us off? Well, not literally, but round off this debate.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll just step in there. That's Nick Hurst from Kirklees Planning. So, appreciate what members are saying. Yeah, we started off by asking 3 questions there about the location and scale, design and materials, and the parking. I've had a good debate about all of those points there as well. I think the main thing that members are feeding back to us is that the design is off. Appreciate that. It's rather blocky and doesn't represent the high quality of architecture that's seen elsewhere on the site. So we want to be looking at a bit of a design review, go for something more modern and engaging that reflects and respects what makes that site special. I think is that fair to say? I will say if the architect's still online, if he has any final comments for you, Chair, if he would like to promote them now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so just thank the committee for their comments. It's always I think the Councillor Pinnock's comment around the visualizations versus the reality is always very different, and there's a lot that can be brought out in terms of just simple elements of detailing in terms of the depth of window reveals and stuff like that have a massive impact on how a building appears in the flesh. We will take the comments away. We are in part constrained by funding, and the scheme obviously is funded by central government, and they have a fairly defined format in terms of the funding allowance. This scheme has already got an enhancement in place, additional funding to allow for the sensitivity of the context. So we've got to work within those constraints. So we will take your comments on board and see what we can do within those. So thank you, committee.
Right, thank you. I believe that's the end of today's business. So thanks everybody, and see you again in a few weeks' time.